Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host Kedar Nimkar.
In this new season, I'm introducing a new format called AudioGyan Case Studies, where I'll be diving deep in just one product, case study, service, campaign, or a design solution. Starting off with the first one with Ajay Shah today. Ajay is a furniture designer, an alumnus of NID Ahmedabad, and has practiced design in India for last 20 years plus. He's a founder of ASDS, Ajay Shah Design Studio, and also started Rubber Band. Ajay comes from a school of thought where he believes design thinking can be applied to products, spaces, and graphics. Although he specializes in furniture design, he finds himself applying design principles to all areas of design. And today we are here to discuss a case study of Rubber Band product, the table that almost wasn't. Thank you, Ajay, for giving us your time, and it's a real pleasure to have you on AudioGyan.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So I'll give you a quick background about the table that wasn't almost for the listeners who may or may not have stumbled upon the product. It is the first in the series of the new collection of furniture by Rubber Band. The table is made of aluminium and is a result of stamping and folding of sheet metal. There are three main components which come together with the help of connector plates and brackets. The design is an expression of the newfound form resulting from a material and construction language. The color application on the flat metal surface removes the association of metal and simply allows it to exist as an object. So this is a small description which I found on the website about it.
Sure.
And yes, we'll start off with a basic question like how did you start Rubber Band and why did you start it? And then moving on and going deep dive into the product itself.
Sure.
So yeah, can you tell us what's Rubber Band?
So Rubber Band was essentially founded in 2007. We, at any design studio, there is always surplus time when in between projects. So this is a case where we had a lot of surplus time, projects were less, and we had the ability to, conceptualize something that we wanted to create for ourselves. We never really saw it as a brand. The intention was really to make stationery that we could use for ourselves. I'm a very avid collector of stationery. I've been buying stationery wherever I travel. And therefore, the intent was to be able to make something that could be of global standards but designed and produced by us. It took us a few years to crack it. The first few initial prototypes that we made were not to the standards that we would like it to be. So it took us a few years to crack it. And after we sort of cracked it, we realized the potential of the product being retailed. And then we branded it called Rubber Band. We called it Rubber Band, and that's how we started thinking about selling it. So the initial origins of the Rubber Band story is never to really start with an intent of selling or to be able to make it into a brand or anything like that. It was just more of a fulfillment of design the way we wanted it to be.
Produce quality kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also I think, every independent design studio or designer for that matter will always have this wish of working without a client. I mean, wanting to do things exactly the way they want to do it. I think in certain cases, if Rubber Band was designed for a client, it wouldn't be the way it is. We've stuck to certain ideologies. We've stuck to certain beliefs that we have for the product. And that's only possible when you become a client yourself, for yourself. So that's how we saw Rubber Band. And it's been the same case ever since. It's been about almost 10 years now. And over the last 10 years, the only thing that we've followed is that we will do it the way we want to do it. We will not be dictated by market. We will not be dictated by commerce only. Commerce is a very important essence of the entire thing for making it a success. But commerce doesn't need to dictate design. It's got to be the other way around, where design in some sense creates awareness and design creates its own identity. So we've stuck to that for all these years. And that's how Rubber Band's been able to survive for the last 10 years. We've thrived. We've had ups and downs, as any brand will have. We've been independent so far. And it's a task, and then there are days you enjoy it tremendously, and there are days it's difficult. But I think it's a part of any entrepreneurial process.
Absolutely.
That happens.
Interesting. And what's like, I mean, people shop for stationeries and bags and furniture and more stuff on Rubber Band. Although the products are like great in quality, we'll discuss more about tables. So you have like around 7 or 8 types of tables. So can you just quickly brief us?
I'll just go one step back.
Oh, sure.
Essentially, when we started Rubber Band, like I said, we started with the paper products, which included a series of notebooks and writing material. It's only about 2 years ago that we bought furniture into the category as a category into Rubber Band. The reason we did this is from 2007 when we started Rubber Band, I also created a parallel brand at that particular point in time, few years down the line, called Industrial Playground. And Industrial Playground was the coming together of two very important things that I hold as a designer. One of the things is that I would like to be able to make things that have an industrial design approach to it. Okay, so it's not artistic, it's not random. It's a very, very conscious industrial design approach that I follow. And therefore, the industrial part comes from there. And the playfulness led me to creating a brand called Industrial Playground. So Industrial Playground coexisted along with Rubber Band for many years. It's only about 2 years ago that we decided that we can merge the furniture bit into Rubber Band and not necessarily have two brands. And that's how the furniture component came into Rubber Band. So just about 2 years ago. Now we found a unique situation over here. We found a situation that we are not able to really classify what sort of furniture this is. I mean, is it office furniture? Is it home furniture? Most furniture brands will classify it in some sense, either for a specific purpose. And since we had been designing all this furniture for a long while, and there were different pieces of furniture, all having their own little stories, we realized that this is furniture for the young in mind. So we don't have an age barrier. There's no entry, there's nobody saying that this is meant for somebody who is more adult or it's more for young. We said if anybody who is young in mind will appreciate this furniture. So if you see the entire Rubber Band furniture collection the way it is now, it's furniture that's got a new formal language. It uses material where there is an application of color. It uses a certain formal style that's very contemporary. It has no roots in a direct way to what is happening in design in India or Indian roots in that sense. None of that is there. Okay, and it's a conscious effort and that's a separate bit I can tell you a little later. But all the furniture that you see over here is extremely contemporary. There's an effort to make it very pragmatic. There's an effort to give it a formal style that's distinctive. And I think, as you mentioned in the starting note, it's the appropriate use of material. It's the appropriate use of. There's a certain economic approach towards design. And when I say economic, it's nothing to do with the money part of it. It's to do with the economy of materials, economy of processes. All of that is being used to design a piece of furniture. There is no excess, there's no flourish, there is no unnecessary, detailing. All of it has been done to be able to arrive at a concise solution. So it's a very important approach that we've been able to self-imbibe, and we work every time we work on a piece of furniture. We make a very conscious attempt to say that we don't stray from that idea. There is a temptation very often that we will try and do something which is radically, different. But I think if you look at good design, and Dieter Rams.
I was just going to come to that.
Yeah, Dieter Rams just said it very well. He said good design is as little design as possible. Yeah. Amongst many, the 10 principles he's written down for what is good design. We believe in that. So if you see there's a certain amount of restraint in design, there's a certain amount of control that we have. And that's how our furniture and our products and our stationery has been evolved. And it's not an approach that we can exercise very freely with our clients. So at ASDS, I'm still dictated in a fairly large way, a little lesser now. Earlier, we had to prove the point. Now people come to us because of the style that we have. But having said that, in case of rubber band, we stick to a very serious approach to design.
In fact, I remember I did one interview with Varun Grover where I asked
Right.
him about limitations.
Right.
And he said that creativity, yes, it thrives on limitations, but certain times the limitations are put by others.
Right.
Or sometimes it's self-owned limitations.
Sure.
So in case of at least my exposure to industrial approach to designing furniture or any of that sort
Right.
was towards Dieter Rams. But I think it's a similar philosophy where we have put in some constraints to develop certain kind of furniture that you have, right?
It's not just the furniture. I mean,
It's the philosophical approach more.
it's more of an ideology that we've been able to, and it's not an ideology that we're completely constrained by. We constantly try and evolve it in our heads. So, for instance, it's not something that we have a blind faith in. We question it, we discuss it, we reject. Okay, a lot of our designs, we will self-reject it because we feel if it doesn't, if it's not, there is no need that we see really, to force fit or do something just for the sake of doing. Fortunately, we're not in the business of creating a large collection just for the sake of it. We're not in that space. We believe that if we make a table or we make a chair or we make a piece of a product, then the intent is let's just make the best that we can within that category. I don't think it's necessary for us to say that we need too many pieces.
Correct.
It's fine. We're happy with that.
Yeah, so coming to the pieces, can you just briefly tell us about the 7 or 8 different types of tables or furniture aspects which you have?
So the furniture we have, before we get into the tables, what we've done is we've been able to categorize it into the types of furniture that we have. So we have chairs, we have tables, we have lounge seating, we've got outdoor seating, we've got benches. But again, very important to emphasize over here, there are 2 clients that we cater to in that sense. One of the clients that we cater to is where we work directly with architects. Okay, we work very closely with architects. It's something that I really enjoy. And we're trying to provide solutions in furniture design for their projects, which is the most serious kind of work that I do. Okay, it's to be able to find the right solution for a particular project that the architect has designed. And in the case of that, it's important for us to be able to find a solution that matches the identity of the interior that they do. At the same time, there are budgets and there are other things. But what you see over here as a part of the furniture collection that we have, it's largely, we don't, whilst we categorize it as tables, chairs and everything, we see them as objects or tools that can be used in any way. So, I mean, to give you an example, if I have a bench, I'm not even saying that the bench needs to be used only for outdoors. It can be used in a waiting space. It can be used in any indoor space. It can be used as a part of a prop element. It can be used as as something that can be bringing some life to any kind of interior. I'm not dictating whether it's office, home, or retail, or institutional. I'm saying the opportunity of using that piece interestingly exists. To come back to the point that you're asking me about specifically with tables, we have a series of tables that we've designed over the last few years, and each table has its own aesthetic, its own construction, it has its own reasoning, and some tables are perceived to be suited in a particular way. So you will find the purchasing for certain pieces of furniture happen more for office use, more for home use. But it's largely, again, like I said, we make these tables not directly suited for a purpose. We try and make the piece of furniture that you can use it in different environments and different scenarios. So that's the way we do it. There are about, if I'm not mistaken, about 6 to 8 designs that we have, and all sizes. We configure them in many sizes. We have different materials. we work with largely metal. We have various tabletops ranging from glass to metal to wood to even stone. And yeah, I mean it's the individual pieces, but they can be customized to with attachments. They can be customized to suit or fulfill a particular function. Recently, as far as office space is concerned, there is a fair amount of wire management that needs to be incorporated in workstations.
Correct.
So all of these tables, whilst they come as a very simple basic table, they all have various attachments that can be added onto it to fulfill a function.
Correct. Yeah. So I was particularly interested in knowing more about the table that almost wasn't.
Correct.
So where did this inspiration come from? Like, what was the thought process behind it?
So some years ago, so one of the things that I do is I work mostly, if you see the work that we've done, we mostly work with metal. And okay, this is an old story, but way back when I was doing my studies in NID for my diploma project, I designed a table that was called Phaedrus. Now, Phaedrus was essentially, the name Phaedrus came from the famous book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And these are early influences in your life. You read these books and you get very excited about the idea of quality. And Phaedrus is a character in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which he constantly speaks about the notion of what is quality and what is experience. So anyway, I had designed that table back in the year 87, 88.
Wow.
Okay, back all the way back then. And it's a table that was close to my heart. I had tried to do something that, in NID standards back then, it wasn't the conventional way to make a table. It was sheet metal. It had some interesting features and some interesting details.
Oh, so even during college, it was getting hands-on with your material itself.
Yeah.
And not just sketches.
It starts with sketching, but then it always is this idea of translating it to a particular material.
But that time you played with the real material?
Yeah.
Oh,
we actually used to make things, yeah.
Okay, nice.
We used to make things. So anyway, so going back, 88, flashback, and since then I've been toying with the idea of trying to make a table in a similar method. And it's never happened. So post Phaedrus, there was another table that I attempted to make, which is called Lisa. And Lisa didn't happen as a table because, whilst I designed it, it worked well. It could be appropriate in every sense in terms of construction, in terms of form. I still felt something was missing to it. And it's only then that I kept working a little more on it and I started tinkering with it. And I, tried various configurations in terms of how we can construct the table. And I think just about a year and a half ago, I finally got to a point where I thought, this is it. This is the table the way I'd like it to be. I don't see anything more that I can do with it in the format that it is. I love the proportions. I love the construction. I love the fact that it's made in such a simple way. I love the fact that the roots are from 87, 88. Okay, that's the roots and the evolution as a person, as a designer that I've gone through. It's a massive evolution. All of us go through that, right?
Correct.
So you can see the maturing of the design thinking that's happened since then to now. All of it worked perfectly well. And there's a sense of satisfaction. There's a sense of relief. There's a sense of, saying that this is right. And by the way, that's how I work in a lot of my projects. When I'm working on any self-development projects for Rubber Band, till I don't get that feeling that this is right, I'm not able to let the product release in any sense. I have to feel, even if it's a small notebook that I design or if it's a writing instrument or anything that I work on, until I don't feel that this seems right. Okay, it's a very odd kind of a statement to make. How do I know it's right? I think it's more to do with intuition. It's more to do with
instinct.
Instinct, exactly. It's more to do with instinct. You feel that this is right. So that's how the table that almost wasn't happened. And the reason I called it the table that almost wasn't is because it almost didn't happen. I mean, it could have, I mean, had I lingered with it or had I procrastinated it a little longer, it probably wouldn't have happened. Yeah, that's how it happened.
Wow. In fact, I have more deeper question on the same lines, but we'll come back to it later. What is your take on the products having too many joints? Because this is my personal question where
Right.
I've slightly exploring some furniture. I've seen like especially with you, right? I've seen it live in my time, and like there are very less curves. The object itself placed on the shelf are more important than the material itself. So, in fact, when I saw it for the first time, I experienced what is called invisible design.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts on products having too many joints? I mean, especially in case of the table wasn't there is a single body or die cut and things like that.
So there is no rule for this. If I was to say, do I have a viewpoint on too many joints? I don't think so. I don't think it can be classified in that way.
But
I
if you
think-
see now these days MacBook also they call it unibody, single body. So
Right.
I think that is something.
I think it's the nature of the times that we live in. There is, if you see, okay, look at design the way it's heading overall. I mean, if you see overall, there is this factor of, there is this factor of conciseness. I mean, I love the word conciseness in design. Even when we converse, okay, we find ourselves being a little more to the point now. I mean, the way the world is at the moment, we find that every aspect of design, from thought to realization, there is, and because a lot of this is getting made in numbers, and there is the factor of mass production, people are constantly asking, if there is a way that we can find a far more economical way to be able to make this. Now, it's almost being, in some sense, we are influenced by everything that we see around us, and we realize that the idea of doing lesser it's just not for the aesthetics. It's not to be able to say that I'm going to start the entire exercise by making lesser joints. You don't start like that. But I think if you are a fairly aware person and you see things around you, you will get this feeling of wanting to find a solution that seems appropriate, and therefore you might reduce. The excessiveness that used to be there in our lives at one point in time is anyway got lesser. I don't think anybody wants to be sitting in an oversized sofa anymore. I don't think anybody wants to be, living in environments that are overcrowded or I think it's almost surrounding us in some sense that idea of being happier with lesser is starting to happen in every sphere of our lives. And I think that's just sort of reflecting in the furniture in some sense.
I think there is other aspect to it where is there any other aspect like being cohesive because there are different materials.
Right.
So I'll give you an example where like I'd just been to one Apple store and
Right.
the entire staircase was just one stone.
Right.
So they could have easily broken down and used multiple parts to it, but
Right.
it was just carved out of one stone. So what would be the reason for that? I mean, in terms of, again, unibody or...
I don't think it's unibody. I think it's the idea of being able to. So I've seen the staircase that you're talking about, and there is a certain amount of. I would say the intent is largely, in the case of all of these kind of exercises that you see, is they want to be able to make it far more. There is a simplification process.
Mm-hmm.
There is a process of simplification. There's a process of being able to. There is also this thing of trying to reduce a visual assault. When you see certain things and you realize that there is too much happening, subconsciously in some manner, it's assaulting on your senses. So I think a lot of good product design today is making it easy on the eyes. A lot of good product design that we engage with and we interact with, the purpose is being defined. So there is no need for me, just to go back to the staircase for a moment, there's no need for me to excessively overconstruct something which is just a flight of stairs. No, there is no need. And yeah, you're right. The cohesiveness, the tightening of the form, the reduction, the tactile quality of a staircase. When my hand runs over a baluster. Those are the more important aspects. I don't have to glorify it. I don't have to glorify it, and I don't have to use expensive materials, nor do I need to be able to create a detail that needs to shine out. There is no need. In fact, the moment it gets integrated within a larger space, it becomes a component within the overall space.
Correct.
It's not attempting to glorify itself.
That way being invisible. Yeah.
That in that sense it becomes invisible and a part of a larger statement. In the case of a staircase, I think the maturity of good design, or when you speak about good design, I think it's to be able to have, again, going back to where we started, a philosophy or ideology that you work with and you apply it to the complete project. You don't try and think of the project from one idea and then suddenly start doing other things in the components that are included in the project. You carry that idea across everything. And you're right. I mean, Apple is a good example of the way it creates environments, and the translating right from product to environment to the way they communicate. All of that. It's a common example that you might have heard from many people, but there are other brands that also do the similar things. I think it's important to have a larger concept and then find a way, which is what in some sense Rubber Band wants to be and wants to do.
Correct.
We are far smaller. I still think 10 years is not very old. 10 years is just the beginning of what we can become. I think it's helped us formulate our ideas, and the best of brands, the best of global brands, the initial period is always searching.
Correct.
Till they find exactly what they're looking for, and then it opens up, and then there's a growth.
I think the biggest driver for these kind of philosophies is that why you are building such things, and then it translates into all the things you make. Like tomorrow, if you come up with a T-shirt as well, it just translates the same idea.
Exactly. Yeah.
So coming back to the table, that wasn't what made you choose aluminium over other materials?
So like I said, it's been an evolution. It's been something that I've been trying to do for a long while. Aluminum has a certain amount of, it's a softer material. I can, if given the right quality of aluminum, I'm able to fold it exactly like paper. Okay. I'm able to give it the similar quality that I would. It has a similar kind of a quality that you would find in paper in the way it can be cut, it can be folded, it can be structured in that sense. And again, interestingly, if you see the final outcome of the table, you don't even see the aluminum. It's just essentially 3mm sheet that's been folded in a particular way. But the moment I apply it with color, there is no material. There is, which is what you said in the beginning when you spoke about the table, is the moment the material disappears. I mean, had I left it as aluminum and then you have a perception, or when you see it, you know that it's a metal sheet of aluminum, you are able to perceive it in this way. But when you see it in just color, you're only looking at it as a shape, as a form. And surprisingly, it's not very heavy. The overall table is light. Surprisingly, it's got a lovely feel. You touch it, you feel it. It's got a nice. The color gives it another character.
Correct.
I've done the table in many colors, but most popular color that's stuck on with it is a kind of a deep bottle green,
Correct, green, yeah.
right?
Even
And
I like that
then I've done a white and I've done a black, and each time I've done a different color for different people, the character changes. The moment I do that in a matte black, okay, it has a certain sophistication to it. The moment I do it in a kind of a color of like bottle green, it suddenly becomes a slightly more playful element. And the moment I do it in white, it becomes minimalist. So I mean, literally, it's a form that is almost taking to creating different moods and different atmosphere by just the application of color. Material disappears.
Correct. Beautiful. And did you do any? Did you guys do any user research before?
No, none at
thinking?
all.
Nothing.
So this is it, right? So at any time, you always create two kinds of products. One kind of product that you're doing it more from.
No, in this case, user research, which I want to mean is obviously the form and function is absolutely
No, but no
clear.
user research at all.
No, but there are certain aspects of ergonomics as well, right? So
we've been working on these kind of pieces of furniture for very long.
Okay,
so we
so
understand the ergonomics very well.
Mm-hmm.
We understand what's the appropriate table height. We understand, what is the interaction that a chair has to have with the table, and then the table with the space. We understand all that. I mean,
that came with like all the learning experience.
It's come with all our learning experience, correct?
Yeah.
So we've really not done any user research. And I was saying that there are certain pieces that I designed that are not really even the aesthetics. I mean, if I look at the aesthetics of the table right now, it's not something that everybody will get. Okay, it's all right.
Yeah.
Some pieces it's all right to be able to convince the designer in you that you can push it to a limit where it becomes more of a challenge for you and makes it more interesting. Let me explain to you the table. I mean, the table is essentially just three parts. Okay, it's got the tabletop and it's got the leg elements. The leg elements are identical except that it's a left and a right. That's it. And these three things come together with they connect together with the help of a bracket. It's
there's
as
something
simple as that.
extending arms also, right?
No, the leg, if you see the design, and I really wish this podcast was more visual, then I could show the table.
Yeah.
But essentially it's the way the table leg is folded that has an overhang.
Okay.
You're right. I mean, it has an overhang, and it's just to be able to break the volume of a table in a slightly more different way. Any table, and this is very, very difficult. I mean, if I was to, if I was to talk about a chair, I don't know how much time we have, but a chair is really the most complex piece of furniture designer can make. Okay, and it takes years to be able to get a good chair right. And similarly, a table, I mean, you always know that a table will have a tabletop and it'll have four legs. How do you deconstruct it? I mean, it's so damn difficult.
Correct.
Today, if I ask you to rethink a chair, or if I ask you to rethink anything in a form that you've always been used to seeing it in a particular way, I'm asking you to now say, okay, don't think of it that way. Where do you start?
Correct. It's very difficult to disrupt.
It's extremely difficult. So whilst it's taken me so many years since the time I made my first table, it's essentially I think it's essentially more from a self-pursuit point of view that this exercise has happened. So yeah, I mean, it's not easy.
Yeah. I remember I did one interview which is about to go live next week, next week maybe. It's with Feni Ganatra.
Okay.
So she made the bounce chair, and the chair. That's why I had like a specific question for her, like how do you get that breakthrough in your work? Because it was very early on for her at least.
Yeah.
And it's a different.
It happens. Sometimes you get a very good early breakthrough, but you're right.
Yeah. Ajay, I have last two questions. First is when and how did you realize, which was touching to the earlier point you mentioned, that how and what was the process when you realized that yes, the table is ready to go for manufacturing?
Like I said earlier, I think there is a instinctiveness, that intuition that you have, that you feel.
No, but there would be some metric in your mind, right? Like it is done.
So there are the tangible matrix of saying that it's sturdy, it's producible in from a production point of view. We can make this, using certain dies and tools. There is the structural integrity and stability that we've been able to achieve. So those are all your physical, tangible, matrix that we look at. And then there is the overall visual appeal. There is the overall proportion, feel that you get, the sensation that the product gives you. That's the intangibles. Okay. Anybody can evaluate design from a tangible perspective. But I think the combination of the intangible and tangible makes it, at least for me, everybody will have their own point of view.
Correct.
And again, very important over here to be able to say that it's not intended to shock. It's not intended to surprise. It's not that. Sometimes design might start by saying that I want to create something that nobody's seen. That's not the goal over here. The goal over here is to be able to say that can this be done? Can a form be rethought? Can the construction become more appropriate to the material? So there are very real questions. At no point are we saying that I'm going to, try and do something just for the heck of it. It's not that. It's none of that. It's a more, and like I said, imagine from 88, I've been lingering on with this and trying out things. So I think, and it's not that I'm trying it out all the time. I think there's a subconscious kind of a growth, the maturity that seems to be developing, which forms your ideas, which creates, a certain, even if you pick up a pen and you sketch, right, today, over so many years, I think your mind is already determining that this won't work or this may work, so.
Correct.
So I think that's the reason we felt it works. The other thing that happened with us, as far as the table that almost wasn't, is that when we made the table, it just so happened that there was an opportunity that we had to present the table in London. And we showcased it in a fair in London. And it had some very interesting reviews that we got back, to the extent that first, nobody thought that this kind of design can come from India. The Association of Design in India is still probably a little more
ethnic,
and you're right, craft, ethnic, and all that. So when somebody saw a table which is made of an industrial material, and it's got a color application of that kind, and it's got everything that we spoke about, so we had interesting reviews. And finally, I think the validation that happened over here is that Manchester Art Gallery, approached us, and they wanted the piece to become a part of their permanent collection.
Oh, wow, nice.
So that became my strongest validation in some sense. It's.
But I think that is in hindsight, right? Like
that is in hindsight.
Yeah.
That's something that now, and again, it's not that we were looking for any validation. It's not that we're trying to say, okay, if this happens, it's great. There are other pieces that I've designed which I haven't got to any kind of validation, and they're still my favorite pieces.
Correct.
So it's not that you're looking for that kind of validation, but yeah, today.
Yeah, I think I'm getting the drift of what you're coming to, because
Right.
yeah, it happens when you are like mulling over the same thought process over and over again. Because I've learned this while I was trying my hands on flute.
Right.
And my flute teacher told me that don't wait for the teacher to say yes or wrong to playing. It will happen as you just keep working on it.
Absolutely.
I think there's a phrase called anahat nada.
Okay.
Like basically these musicians who perform are actually just expressing them on the stage, but
Right.
off stage they're continuously thinking about those things only.
Right.
It's just subconsciously continuously happening there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ajay, I would like to conclude with one last question. Just given the time we have, obviously there are many questions which I have, but do you worry about people like stealing or replicating this particular design of the table that was almost wasn't?
Not really, no. For two reasons.
Okay.
One is that it's not a commercially. It's not that this particular design I'm talking. I've had my other designs ripped, and there's nothing I can do about it. Today, for instance, just to answer that question, rubber band, the products, the paper products, are being copied by everybody. We've seen copies by the largest manufacturer to the new entrant, and there's nothing I can do about it. Whom am I going to really go and tell? I've had a conversation, by the way, with a manufacturer who's copied our products, and I've said, why do you do it? I mean, if you want, do something else of your own. And I think it's all right. I mean, you can't do much about these things. So having said that, as far as a table that almost wasn't, it would hurt me for sure if it gets copied. But I think you got to rise above these things. You can't do much about this.
No, I feel very sad when that Vitara chair is just made into a local.
Everybody seems to be there are so many copies. We refuse to use copies. So for instance, even when I'm designing projects for clients, we refuse to. If a client tells me to use a copy of a well-known brand in the project, maybe if I'm doing a space design or maybe I'm doing something else, it's against our ethics as a studio and as a brand. We don't do it at all. So but that's the only thing I can control. I can only control it at my end. If it happens at all anywhere else and somebody does decide to make it, and there will be versions of it, I'm sure. But nothing I can do.
No, but nothing in terms of the way Steve Jobs had patented a lot of designs and
so here it's a little difficult because
here as in India.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a little difficult because then even if the slightest, if I had a slight degree of angle, and if they were to change that degree of angle, they can easily say it's not the same. We've had these instances come up in the past. We've spoken to the person who's doing this kind of duplication in that sense, and it just is. I think you got to keep moving on, and you got to keep doing the next thing that you want to. I think that's the only way to sort of get over this.
I think plagiarism is something which justifies its own audio again, maybe more detailing out how things are copied and how things are.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have one last question. What would be the evolution of the table that almost wasn't? I mean, is there any?
At the moment, nothing. At the moment, nothing. At the moment, we just sort of we've been excited with the outcome, and whilst we are doing other projects, we feel that there is a need, not only as a designer but as a brand, there is a need for us to constantly pursue similar kind of projects. Some years ago, I started something called Rubber Band Lab.
Okay.
And Lab was supposed to be an exercise that I wanted to have parallel to the work that we do in Rubber Band, where there is questioning, there is seeking, there is dismantling existing notions and then trying to find answers. And Rubber Band Lab early on had come up with a construct of a book which we call Nude. And it's probably me removing all my preconceived notions of a notebook.
Okay.
And bringing it down to its bare bones. So that Rubber Band Lab started with Nude. And then it started with another product that we called Black, and then the table that almost wasn't. So I think it's extremely important for me that this table serves me as a reminder that I need to keep doing this, pursuit more often.
Cool. I think this is a good note to end this. Obviously, there are thousands of things to be spoken about the table that almost wasn't, and almost every product that Rubber Band is producing right now.
Thank you.
So for people who wish to buy, there's rubberbandproducts.com, right?
That's right.
Any other place where people can follow your work and just...
I think we're on Instagram. We are on all the social media channels. But yeah, rubberbandproducts.com is the place to come and see the furniture and the products. And we have a studio.
There's 2 physical stores?
No, we used to have a physical store, but now we welcome people openly at our studio. We have a studio at Regal Cinema, inside of Regal Cinema. So we freely welcome people to walk in and come and talk with us.
Oh, nice.
So it's not a studio, it's not a shop. It's more of a design studio.
Okay.
Where very often you'll find people walking in and then we'll get into conversations with them and explain to them our reason for being.
Superb. I think all the best to all your future products, and thank you once again for giving your time.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be helping you. Thanks.
Okay. That's it from this AudioGAN case study of Rubber Band Products.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.